Well, hello and welcome back to Rebekah. It's time once again for a weekly chatty catch up on everything I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general chit chat and lifey stuff. So I finished 2 books this week, and both of them were very good. So the first one that I finished was Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebekah Taussig. I read this for the Spoonies Readathon, and this is a memoir, kind of essays, nonfiction surrounding Taussig's experience as someone who got cancer in childhood very young and became disabled and has been in a wheelchair ever since. She has some level of mobility through life that varies. So sometimes she is able to use a walker very short term. Other times she is completely wheelchair bound. So she talks it through that. I think that for me, this was a great new perspective to add to what I've read on the topic, though I don't feel it really included any new information. But this is very easy to read, I think, and you can understand her perspectives on these things and the things that she's experienced very easily. So I think this would be a great introduction to reading about these topics because she does very much use her own personal experiences as a jumping off point to talk about the broader conversation of disability and physical impairment moving through the world and the types of assistance that you can get, the difficulties in searching for housing, her job, because she has been fairly independent, and she talks about, that's not afforded to everyone with disability and the ways the world really makes that difficult. She's also someone who is of a very religious, large Midwestern family background, and I found some similarities there that I connected with. I'm not from the Midwest originally, but I live there now, and I do come from a very strong religious background, though I'm no longer religious at this point. But like so much of that, I think was what I both connected with and struggled with the most. For me, this was all very palatable, easy to read, easy to consume and process, I think. And so in terms of that, that's a great introductory text. But it didn't introduce any new concepts or confront me in any way, really. And last year, I think, either last year or the year before, I read The Pretty One by Kia Brown. That was much less cohesive and a little more all over the place in terms of essays, so I don't know that that one was presented quite as well as this one. I feel like Kia Brown's approach was much more confronting of the reader and required more of you, I think. But specific to the religious context, she talks at the beginning about how she is continually being kind and accommodating, even when it's very uncomfortable and not the right thing to do, of people who are sort of infantilizing her as a disabled person. And that happens very frequently throughout this, especially with fellow religious people. And you see her doing that over and over and over, and I wanted her to have that moment of reflection at the time when she's writing this, where she has gotten beyond that, where she's looking back and saying, I have the tools now that I can stand up for myself and not be that excessively kind, accommodating person, because I shouldn't be. And she doesn't really have that moment. But I think this is still an evolving progress for her, and she's just giving her perspective, and that's completely valid. There is a lot of harm done in the religious context specific to modern day Christianity, where we can do better, or they can do better. I'm not in the we anymore, but you can change that perception, where Kia Brown approached that topic saying, you're doing all this harm because you are specifically perceiving that a disabled body is one to be healed, rather than one that's just as equally fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. And Taussig is not there yet, it seems like. I wish, there are many moments in this where she's dealing with predatory or manipulative religious situations, people that I would consider it pretty much outright spiritual abuse of her. It's certainly unkind, at minimum. Specifically, one of the minor moments is just somebody who's a stranger approaching her, asking to pray for her in public for healing. And she's not really comfortable with that and how harmful that is to her. So she's telling us those aspects from her internal experience. And she has made that one step to initially turn down the prayer, saying, I don't really feel comfortable with that, but this other approach is okay. And then the person kind of manipulates the situation in their favor to get what they want, right? And very often, this is clearly propped up by the people in the pulpit who often have wearing glasses, who have hearing aids, that sort of thing. And yet they other disabled bodies very, very much. And really, it's extremely demeaning. So that was a bit of a rant, but I think there was so much to glean from this in the basics, in the ways that she's imparting those basics. Her experience as a teacher, I think, was the best part for me, because it reminds me how far we've come. She's talking through teaching classes and having teenagers who literally just don't care and don't seem to have an understanding of the idea of a disabled person being something they need to think about or should want to think about. And it's clear the progression over time that has gotten better somewhat, but it also reminds me how far I've come in my mindset about this as well. I'm certain I would not have really thought about this, and now it's just a foregone conclusion to me that inclusive design and planning are things we need in this world and are necessary realities, where from her perspective, she's very much introducing those to the reader as if they're brand new concepts that you may never have heard of before or considered before. And, you know, for me, I'm a fish in the water who can't tell what water is anymore, you know? So I do feel like those ideas, even just in the few years since she wrote this, have proliferated so much more that most people would, I think, be much more familiar with this. But I think this is still covering good ground. It's just pretty well-trod ground. And then a definite win is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second of the Anna and Din mysteries. And this is very high fantasy, a secondary world, lots of world building, but it feels so natural. And I would say many people have said these are kind of standalone companion novels, but for me, there is so much building on the world building, so much layering of the world building from the first book to this book, that you do definitely need to read them in order, in my opinion. The mystery stories are self-contained, though. So this is, as I said, very high fantasy. It's not epic fantasy because they're murder mysteries. So we're following Anna and Din. Specifically, we're in Din's perspective. And Din is sort of a Watson to Anna's Sherlock Holmes, basically. And that's very, very much the dynamic and what the type of story is. In this case, there has been a murder at the Treasury office in a far-flung nation state, sort of, that's connected with the empire that they serve, but not part of it quite. However, they're in a tenuous trade agreement, more or less. And in this world, I don't know how much I want to get into this too much, because this is very detailed in terms of world building. So in this world, in the first book, we very much were caught up in the idea of these leviathans. They're sort of old gods almost, or like ancient sci-fi creatures. They're beasts of the deep and ocean. They have massive walls, sea walls, to keep them out, and these constant legion forces fighting against ever-present attacks in the southern walls. So we have these leviathan elements. We also have a very biological aspect to this world, and the magic of this world. Really everything about this world is tied up in biological aspects. Plants, significantly, especially. So all of their buildings are really tied up in plant matter. They magically alter and enhance themselves using things that you would recognize as sort of potions or plant grafts. It's very, very, very curious and interesting. So everyone is enhanced in some way for the most part. And specifically, Din is enhanced as an engraver, so he can smell something and directly record memories of everything he's seen and done. So in that way, he assists Anna very much by going out in the field and doing the investigation, and then he comes back with his perfectly recorded memories of everything he saw, who he talked to, all the interviews he did, and is able to recite in perfect detail exactly what he saw to her, because she is in some sort of heightened state, hypersensory, in terms of her augmentations, where she wears a blindfold most of the time to prevent getting overstimulated. And yet, she can still tell what's going on most of the time, despite the fact that she's not using her sight a lot of the time. And she is a firecracker. She is foul-mouthed. She's constantly looking for drugs. She's a trouble, for sure. And she is a very Sherlockian character in that. She's not very palatable or polite, even though she is constantly in situations with people who are very proper or royal or powerful. And the dynamic between the two of them, Din is really reserved and controlled for the most part. In this one, we see him be a little less controlled. But certainly they are very different characters. And the characterization is incredibly strong here. I think everyone feels like a fleshed out, real human being, even though some of them are not quite human beings. And every single character, you understand their motivations in the end, really, including the baddies. The people that are villains don't feel like mustache twirling pure evil. They're people you can sympathize with and understand how they got to where they did, why they were motivated to do the crimes that they did. Specifically, the one villain who is the actual murderer is clearly a bad person the whole way through, and yet you understand, you relate, and you can feel the reasons why. But it's just compelling as far as mystery. This is very hard to talk about because the density of the layering of world building and the fact that it's a mystery, so you don't want to talk about any of the real plot of the story. But just everything about this is so rich and lush and immersive. I listened to this on audio as well. And I can't remember the audio narrator's name, Andrew Faville, something like that. I will put it down here. So good, really, really fantastic narrator. I experienced the audio narration with the Founders trilogy, and Robert Jackson Bennett had like a voice actor for cartoons doing that one, and was also fantastic. And here, I think this is purely an audiobook narrator, but also really great animated voice, very lively. Every single person has a different voice, and it's just so good. So I was totally immersed in this because I was hybrid reading through the whole way, and I was so worried I was going to lose it. I got down to the last day because I've not been able to read anywhere near as much as I've wanted to lately, and last day I was just like desperately trying to not lose the audiobook because it's so good. I just desperately wanted to read it. Yeah, so I think that's everything for this one. My thoughts are, obviously this was just so good, so compelling. Every time I had to put it down, I did not want to. I just was so short on time recently that I have not been able to get to it, and I'm so glad I finally did after my audio came in, because this is almost certainly going to be a favorite of the year. So, I didn't even talk about the political aspect. So there is, I did mention this is like a far-flung kingdom, sort of nation state that's connected to the empire, and that plays a big role. In my experience, Jackson Bennett does provide some real-world like political commentary, but I love that both this and the Founders trilogy, the other books of his that I've read, he is commenting not from a like heavy contemporary messaging perspective. He's tackling more broad political themes of let's build this in a fantastical way and talk about how just this concept politically is a problem, or what the problems of it are, rather than giving us a specific, this political thing that's going on right now is bad. That's not what he's doing. And so he is tackling some things that are relevant to today, but I think they're pretty timeless. And I love that. I love the way he is using a murder mystery to also explore these political dramas as well in all his books I've experienced. So good. Yeah, this has a lot to say, and I can't wait to reread it, really. So the one thing I started this weekend actually is The Messiah Confrontation by Israel Noel, my nonfiction selection for maybe Midrash Readathon. And actually, I can't remember if I mentioned it. Sitting Pretty was for the Spoonies Readathon, which is focused on reading about disability and chronic illness experiences. So those are both readathon books. And I think that's it for books. I do have ongoing as well, I think still from last week I mentioned Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Again, I've not had that much time for reading this week, so I'm glad I finished anything. And then I really want to get back to Middlemarch. I desperately need to reborrow the audio and start hybrid reading that again because I want to dive in, but I need the time. Onward to what I watched this week. I had a couple of good finishes this week. One was Next Level Chef, which I have very little to say about because it's always the same thing. Next Level Chef season 4 just finished, and I was watching it as it was running. It is a show that's a cooking competition, so all these chefs of various types, so they usually have some pro chefs, some social media chefs, and some home chefs, and they're coming on competing in a special fashion to do with the title, where there are 3 levels of kitchens, and each of them have different quality of equipment. So the basement has really terrible equipment, and the top floor has really amazing like the best top-notch professional kitchen stuff you could have, right? So they get a platform that moves through, and they only have a very short time to pick all their ingredients from the platform. And it obviously moves from the top to the bottom, so the people at the bottom have the least choice and the worst quality stuff. So it's an innovative premise. It's always fun, and I think I've enjoyed all of the seasons, though I tend to less like the social media chefs. So I always kind of am rooting for them to get kicked off. Yeah, but this year, I think all 3 of the finalists were really, really deserving, really fantastic. And while I kind of wanted someone else to win, I was very happy with the person who won, I will say. No spoilers for anybody, but yeah, I think all 3 of the finalists were really great and were fantastic throughout the entire season. So I just always enjoy the show specifically, but I have certainly grown away from Ramsay's shows. It seems like he has an ever-present churn of different shows coming out now, and most of them don't really appeal to me. He's got some new one that's kind of like Kitchen Nightmares, but he's almost rebranded it and it looks not interesting at all. So yeah, I'm sort of moving away from the Ramsay franchise, I think. Other than that, I watched a documentary called 17 Pages on Nebula. And this was very cool and about something I'd never heard about. It's almost true crime, but I don't think there was ever anything actually criminal about it. It's covering a case that is kind of one of the most major scientific misconduct situations in the US in the 1980s and early 90s. And the way they tackled it was really innovative and unique. In a way that I don't want to spoil if you're going to watch it, but feel free to ask me in the comments if you're intrigued and want to be spoiled on what the unique thing is about how they delivered this. But I thought that brought something really fresh to it and made it very watchable. And I don't know how much to talk about it because of that, but I thought it was very, very compelling to watch. It could have been really dry and boring because it is just like all about science. But so much of this was full of intrigue and drama. And it talks a lot about the early days of the NIH, which has been very much in conversation recently with the current political situation in the US. So early days of the NIH are coming into that, and in fact, it seemed like they had like 5 employees at this time, and so they weren't really doing oversight on academic institutions of their science. They were just sort of trusting the scientists to police themselves. And that has since grown to be sort of more of the role that came out of this situation, because this turned into a congressional hearing that was looking for, well, where are our grants going? And largely it seems like that came out as things were right, but in this specific situation, it seems questionable. So yeah, I hope people will watch that. 17 Pages was really, really good. Fantastic, fantastic documentary. So I think that's it for finishes on watching stuff. Life stuff, not very much was going on because energy has been very, very low this week. Energy low, we had really bad storms on Friday, and that was kind of terrible, though fast. As far as where I am, I'm fine, but it was wild because it came through so rapidly. It was like sunny and perfect, and 10 minutes later it was black, pitch black outside, and hailing like crazy. So I was rushing cats to the basement, which is tough with a foster. My cats are well trained and they understand, but they also were not pleased with the foster being down there. So I'm like trying to corral my cats to keep them down there with the foster down there. It was a nightmare. Herding cats, very literally. And then the most exciting thing from my week was also very animal related. In that I got to assist a baby turtle in crossing a road to go into the water for the first time. So I'll try to remember to put in some footage of that, but that was so cool, like really, really cool. I've never seen that before. And just randomly, it was like this little leaf looked like wobbling along on the road, and I was like, oh no. Of course, as soon as it got into the water, it got flipped over and panicked and pulled all its limbs in. So I didn't take it back out and just set it near the water, away from it though, so it could de-panic and collect itself a little bit. So hopefully little Turt is okay. Yeah, so I think that's all as far as week-wise. Very, as I said, low energy, and too busy work-wise. So that's been intruding a lot. And formats has been hard reading-wise because at the start of the year, I really lined up a lot of things for my Read What You Own challenge as hybrid reads. And so I have all these things that I want to just sit down and focus on. And I'm now scrambling for things that I just want to audio read, and stuff like that, because I need stuff for the gym that I'm not going to be able to hybrid read. Like Drop It with Corruption, I probably could have gotten in a couple more hours at least at the gym, but it's such a pretty book, I don't want to hold it in my sweaty hands while I'm on a treadmill or something. So yeah, so I'm having formatting issues in terms of prioritizing reading, but time is also, well, time and mental focus have been a struggle all this year to getting to as much as I've wanted to. And so my internal organization of reading has been a struggle, because I very much want to read all the things. And I've talked about this before. I want to read all the things, and I've just not been able to. I'm not getting to things as quickly as I would like. And that's been an internal struggle, though the quality of my reading has been so high this year. I don't think I've ever had a better reading year in terms of quality. So I am reaching for the right books, and I'm just sad that I'm missing out and not getting to as much as I want to, or I think I should be able to, because of both time constraints and mental constraints on my abilities to read. So I'm hoping that we're getting out of that. I feel like this week was a step back, and hopefully we will be moving forward quickly again, where I'm back to having energy. So I think that's it. I think that's it for today, at least. So no recommendations for today. Again, time constraints. I have not watched anywhere near enough BookTube. I'm so behind. My watch later has not been getting caught up at all. That's been terrible. And I've added a lot of stuff that is non-BookTube. I've been following my whims on YouTube, and that's led to adding a lot of other random stuff that I'm enjoying a lot, but it means I'm not getting to as much BookTube stuff. So, which is fine. I'm enjoying it all. I'm just very, very behind. I almost forgot. So I did want to mention, as far as BookTube. So this is kind of silly, but my tablet is annoying me in that I frequently now cannot like or comment on videos. I can't click anything on the screen except for the YouTube button if I'm watching multiple things. So if I have to be really invested, basically, in things to like and comment at this point, because I have to click off, come back, and start the video in order to do that. And that's very frustrating. I'm sure it just means I need to clear my cache or reinstall the YouTube app, but it's so frustrating to do that. I know everybody hates it, so I'm gonna have to do that at some point. But if I'm commenting on your videos less, that's why. It's not anything you've done wrong, it's just that technology is being a jerk, as per usual. So that is it. All right, anyway, wrapping up now. This has been a long, rambly one. So I think that's it for me for today. I will, with that, say I hope you have a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.